The Sigma INFJ doesn't seek power, yet somehow they always hold it. Not because they're loud, but because they're unreadable. Not because they dominate others, but because they understand them on a level most people can't even see. People underestimate them until it's too late. Behind that calm presence and soft-spoken nature lies a mind that's always observing, analyzing, and anticipating. They can see motives before they're revealed and feel energy before a word is spoken. That's what makes them untouchable. What most people don't realize is that Sigma INFJs have rules, unspoken laws that guide their interactions, protect their peace, and silently command respect. They don't need to announce them, they live by them. And anyone who crosses those rules learns quickly why Sigma INFJs are not to be underestimated. They don't seek validation, they don't crave recognition, they play the long game, quietly, strategically, and with emotional precision. Their power doesn't come from ego, it comes from restraint, and that's why nobody dares challenge them for long. In this video, you'll uncover the unspoken power rules of Sigma INFJs, the quiet principles that make them so influential, yet so misunderstood. Before we begin, subscribe to Brainy, like this video, and comment. My silence holds power. Because when a Sigma INFJ moves in silence, the world starts paying attention. They observe before they move. Sigma INFJs don't act without thinking. Every move they make starts with quiet observation. They study people's patterns, their tone, their energy, and even what they don't say. They know that most people reveal more through behavior than through words, and they use that knowledge to stay one step ahead. They prefer to stay quiet at first, while others rush to talk, react, or prove a point. The Sigma INFJ listens. They're watching how people treat others, how they respond under pressure, and what motivates them. It's not paranoia, it's awareness. They understand that the fastest way to lose control is to act before you understand what's really happening. This habit makes them seem distant or slow to respond, but in reality, they're processing everything. They're connecting patterns, testing intentions, and measuring outcomes. They don't just listen to what you say, they evaluate why you said it. They can tell when someone's being honest, manipulative, or defensive, simply by how the energy shifts. It's hard to lie to a Sigma INFJ because they pick up on subtle cues others overlook. They notice when your confidence sounds forced or when your story doesn't match your emotion. They may not call it out directly, but they store it quietly. Every observation becomes data, and that data shapes how they move next. Their calm, observant nature often makes others underestimate them. People mistake silence for weakness when in fact it's preparation. The Sigma INFJ doesn't rush to prove anything. They wait until the moment matters. When they finally decide to act, whether it's cutting someone off, making a decision, or confronting an issue, it's already been thought through from every angle. They believe in efficiency. Acting without full understanding wastes energy and invites chaos. So they take their time, not because they're uncertain, but because they value precision. Their strength lies in restraint. By observing before they move, they make sure every action serves a purpose. And that's why it's hard to manipulate or surprise a Sigma INFJ. By the time others start reacting, they've already figured out the truth. They don't argue, they withdraw. Sigma INFJs don't waste energy on arguments. They've learned that most people don't argue to understand, they argue to win. And the INFJ has no interest in that kind of competition. When the conversation turns into a power struggle, or when logic is replaced by ego, they simply disconnect. They know silence is more effective than shouting. When someone tries to provoke them, the Sigma INFJ stays calm. They analyze the situation instead of reacting to it. They watch how the other person behaves when emotions rise, because anger reveals truth faster than honesty ever will. While the other person loses control, the INFJ gains clarity. They don't withdraw out of weakness. They withdraw because they value their peace. They know arguing with people who are emotionally immature is like trying to reason with a storm. It doesn't matter how clear your point is, the other person only hears what fuels their ego. So instead of proving themselves, they walk away and let silence do the work. To most people, this quiet exit feels confusing or intimidating. They expect a reaction, a defense, a confrontation. But the INFJ gives none. Their lack of response forces others to sit with their own behavior. Over time, that silence speaks louder than any argument could. It shows emotional control, boundaries, and self-respect. The Sigma INFJ doesn't need to convince anyone of their perspective. They understand that truth doesn't need to be defended. It reveals itself over time. By withdrawing, they protect their energy and keep their emotions under control. They've mastered the art of detachment in situations where most people would explode. People who argue for control often mistake the INFJ's silence for surrender, but it's not surrender, it's strategy. The INFJ knows walking away doesn't mean losing, it means refusing to play a game that leads nowhere. And when they withdraw, they don't return to finish the argument later. They've already made their decision. They don't explain it, they don't announce it, they just move on. Because for a Sigma INFJ, the ultimate sign of strength is knowing when a conversation no longer deserves your voice. They speak with precision, not volume. Sigma INFJs don't talk to fill silence. They speak when something actually needs to be said. They believe that words lose power when they're used carelessly, and that's why people listen when they speak. Their communication is deliberate, thoughtful, and grounded in clarity. They think before they respond. While most people rush to talk or argue, the Sigma INFJ pauses to understand. They process what's being said, they read between the lines, and they choose their words carefully. They know one calm sentence can destroy an entire argument. They don't need to raise their voice. Their logic and timing do the work for them. This precision makes people uncomfortable. In a world where most people talk to be heard, the INFJ talks to make an impact. They don't explain things twice, and they don't waste words on people who don't listen. When they speak, it's usually after they've already analyzed the situation in full. That's why their words carry weight. They come from understanding, not emotion. The Sigma INFJ also knows that silence is part of communication. They let pauses linger intentionally. It forces others to think, to question, and sometimes to reveal their own truth. They don't fill the space with noise. They let the tension work in their favor. That calm control makes people rethink what they say next. They're not interested in dominating conversations. They prefer influence over volume. You won't hear them shouting to prove a point because they don't compete for attention. They know that control comes from composure, not noise. And when they do speak, it's often direct enough to end the discussion entirely. Their language is their weapon, but they never use it recklessly. Every word has a purpose and every silence has meaning. They don't talk to impress, they talk to clarify. That's why people remember what they say long after the conversation ends. The Sigma INFJ doesn't speak more, they speak smarter. And that's what makes their words impossible to ignore. They never reveal their entire mind. Sigma INFJs have a habit of keeping most of their thoughts to themselves. They don't do it to be mysterious or dramatic. They do it because they've learned that not everyone deserves full access to their inner world. They understand that once you let people see everything you think and feel, you give them power over you. And the Sigma INFJ never gives away power that easily. They share selectively. When they speak, it's with purpose. They'll let people think they're open, but in reality, what they reveal is just the surface. Beneath that calm exterior is a complex mind constantly analyzing, observing, and connecting patterns that others don't even notice. They think 10 steps ahead, but they rarely explain their process. To them, silence is security. This comes from experience. At some point, they've trusted the wrong people. People who used their openness against them, twisted their honesty, or tried to control them. After being burned like that, they learned to keep their cards close. Now, when they enter any environment, they study before they speak. They listen, they watch, and they decide what version of themselves is safe to reveal. It's not deception, it's self-protection. They are fully aware that information is power, and once you give it away freely, you can't take it back. So they choose privacy over attention and understanding over approval. They know that the fewer people who know their next move, the stronger their position stays. This habit makes them unpredictable, which naturally gives them quiet authority. Others might assume they're being secretive, but it's simply strategy. When you can't be read easily, people respect you differently. They approach you carefully, they realize you don't react like everyone else, and that alone gives you control. Sigma INFJs don't seek to manipulate anyone. They simply understand how the world works. Not everyone is honest, and not every listener is safe. That's why they protect their thoughts the way others protect their money, carefully, quietly, and with intention. By never revealing their entire mind, they keep their peace intact and their power undiluted. Because once you learn to think in silence, you don't need to prove how deep you are. Your actions eventually show it. They control their reactions, not others. Power to a Sigma INFJ isn't about controlling people, it's about controlling themselves. They understand that the moment someone can trigger your emotions, they own your energy. That's why they focus on mastering their reactions. They decide when to speak, when to stay silent, and when to walk away. Emotional control is their quiet form of dominance. Most people react instantly when provoked. They raise their voices, defend their pride, or let irritation take over. The Sigma INFJ does the opposite. When something happens, they pause. They analyze what's really being said, why it's being said, and whether it even deserves attention. This pause gives them clarity, and clarity gives them power. It allows them to respond with intention instead of emotion. They've learned that reacting emotionally often gives away information, your fears, your insecurities, your weak spots. So they keep those parts hidden. They can feel deeply without showing it. And that calmness makes them unpredictable. Others can't read them, can't provoke them, and can't drag them into pointless drama. The INFJ sees right through manipulation because they've already built internal discipline. This control doesn't mean they suppress emotions. They still feel everything, hurt, disappointment, frustration, but they process it privately instead of letting it explode publicly. They'd rather go silent for a few days than say something they'll regret in a few seconds. That's emotional intelligence, not detachment. It's how they protect their peace. Over time, this level of restraint earns them quiet respect. People realize they can't be baited, and that changes the dynamic completely. Arguments lose power when one person refuses to feed them. The Sigma INFJ wins not by out-talking anyone, but by staying calm enough to make everyone else expose themselves. Their control isn't about superiority, it's about stability. They'd rather guide their own emotions than let anyone else steer them. It's the reason they seem unshakable in chaos and composed under pressure. By mastering their reactions, they stop giving away energy that doesn't deserve to leave their mind. And once a Sigma INFJ learns that lesson, no one can pull them back into emotional games again. They let actions expose truth. Sigma INFJs don't waste time arguing with people who twist reality. They've learned that when someone is committed to lying or playing games, logic won't change anything. So instead of defending themselves endlessly, they stay calm and let time reveal the truth. Patience is their strategy, and it always pays off. When someone tries to manipulate them or spread false stories, the INFJ doesn't fight back right away. They know that reacting emotionally only gives the other person more fuel. Instead, they pull back, watch from a distance, and allow the situation to unfold. Because eventually, everyone's behavior exposes their intentions. The INFJ understands that consistency and truth always outlast performance. They've seen this pattern too many times, people pretending, lying, or creating drama just to stay in control. But while those people exhaust themselves keeping the act alive, the INFJ simply waits. They know that time has a way of stripping away masks. People can fake words, but they can't fake patterns. This calm detachment is part of their power. The Sigma INFJ doesn't need to prove their integrity. They let their actions speak for them. Over time, the truth always finds its way out, and when it does, the INFJ never needs to say, "I told you so." The silence is enough. This approach also protects their peace. They understand that constant defending or explaining is draining and rarely effective. Not everyone deserves an explanation, and not everyone can handle honesty. So instead of wasting energy trying to convince anyone, they focus on staying consistent with their own values. Their truth doesn't need validation, it just needs time. And that's where their confidence comes from. Not arrogance, but certainty. They know who they are and what they stand for. They don't rush to clear their name or prove a point because they trust reality to do it for them. The people who doubted them eventually realized the truth on their own, and by then, the INFJ has already moved on. For the Sigma INFJ, the truth doesn't need to be forced, it only needs patience. And patience is something they've mastered better than anyone else. They guard their energy like it's sacred. Sigma INFJs understand something most people overlook. Energy is currency. Every conversation, every connection, every environment either adds to it or drains it. And because they feel things so deeply, they've learned to protect their energy like it's their most valuable asset. They've been through enough to know what happens when they give too much. They remember the exhaustion that comes from constantly being available, the emptiness that follows one-sided relationships, and the quiet frustration of always being the one who listens, fixes, and supports while no one does the same for them. Those experiences change the way they interact with the world. Now they're selective. They don't engage in every conversation. They don't give attention to drama, and they don't chase people who create chaos. If someone drains their peace, they're cut off, not with anger, but with clarity. They don't make announcements, don't seek closure, and don't explain their boundaries. They simply disappear when the energy feels wrong. This isn't arrogance, it's self-preservation. The Sigma INFJ knows that maintaining peace requires discipline. They can't control how others behave, but they can control who gets access to them. That's why they treat their time and attention with the same respect others give to money. Once it's spent, you don't get it back. So they spend it wisely. They've reached a point where they can feel when a connection isn't balanced. If the energy starts to feel heavy, forced, or one-sided, they pull back immediately. They no longer wait for proof that someone is toxic. Their intuition is enough. Protecting their mental and emotional space isn't optional, it's essential. People often misunderstand this as coldness, but it's actually emotional maturity. The INFJ isn't cutting people off to punish them. They're doing it to protect their inner balance. They've realized that peace is a full-time responsibility, and anyone who threatens it doesn't get to stay. So when a Sigma INFJ withdraws suddenly, it's not personal, it's protective. They've learned that their energy is sacred, and not everyone deserves to stand close to it. They disappear to regain power. When a Sigma INFJ disappears, it's never out of weakness or avoidance. It's a conscious decision. They don't vanish to create distance out of pride. They do it to recharge, realign, and regain control over their inner world. Their solitude isn't isolation, it's recovery. They spend most of their time absorbing everything around them. People's emotions, unspoken tension, subtle energy shifts. That sensitivity is both their strength and their burden. Over time, it drains them, especially when they've been surrounded by people who take more than they give. When that happens, the INFJ quietly retreats. They step back from noise, social expectations, and emotional obligations until their mind feels centered again. To outsiders, their disappearance can seem sudden or confusing, but for the INFJ, it's necessary. They know when they've reached their limit. They can sense when their thoughts are getting crowded or when they've been giving too much of themselves away. Instead of waiting for burnout, they pull away early, not to run from people, but to return to themselves. During these silent phases, they reflect deeply, they analyze what went wrong, who disrupted their peace, and how they allowed it to happen. This reflection is how they recharge their intuition and rebuild their strength. They use solitude the way others use therapy to reset mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And when they come back, they're sharper, calmer, and more grounded. Their absence often teaches lessons their words never could. People start to notice the value of their presence only after it's gone. That's part of the INFJ's quiet power. They don't demand respect, they earn it through withdrawal and reappearance. This cycle of disappearing and returning is part of their balance. They give, they retreat, and they come back stronger each time. It's not manipulation, it's maintenance. They've learned that constantly giving without pause leads to exhaustion and resentment, so they protect themselves before reaching that point. For the Sigma INFJ, disappearing isn't about leaving others behind. It's about finding their power again in silence. Because every time they step back, they return with a clearer mind, stronger boundaries, and a deeper understanding of who truly deserves their energy. They intimidate through self-mastery. Sigma INFJs don't need to control others to feel powerful. They control themselves. That's what sets them apart. Most people react to emotions without awareness, but the INFJ has spent years understanding theirs. They've studied their triggers, their responses, and their limits. That level of self-mastery makes them hard to read, harder to manipulate, and almost impossible to break. Their calmness is unsettling to people who rely on chaos. When someone tries to provoke them, the INFJ doesn't take the bait. They stay composed, observing the situation from a higher perspective. This emotional discipline often frustrates manipulators because it removes their leverage. You can't manipulate someone who doesn't give you access to their reactions. This control doesn't mean they're cold or emotionless. They feel deeply, sometimes more deeply than anyone else in the room, but they've learned to direct that emotion instead of letting it control them. They process things privately and speak when they're ready, not when they're provoked. Their stillness isn't passivity, it's strategy. And that quiet confidence naturally intimidates people who depend on dominance to feel strong. The INFJ doesn't need to raise their voice, prove their point, or seek validation. Their presence alone makes others self-conscious. It's not arrogance, it's the energy of someone who knows exactly who they are and doesn't need to prove it. People can sense it. They feel the INFJ's emotional stability, and it exposes their own instability. It's uncomfortable to be around someone who doesn't react the way you expect, someone whose calmness makes your chaos feel obvious. That's why the Sigma INFJ often commands respect without even asking for it. This is quiet dominance, not through control, but through consistency. The Sigma INFJ earns power through restraint, awareness, and discipline. They've mastered their emotions, and in a world full of people who act without thinking, that mastery is rare. Their control is their shield, and their composure is their statement. They don't intimidate by force, they do it by showing what true self-control looks like. And once people realize they can't shake that calmness, they understand why challenging a Sigma INFJ never ends well. They operate in silence, but their impact echoes. A Sigma INFJ doesn't move for attention, they move for purpose. They don't care about being seen or praised, they care about the result. Everything they do is intentional, calculated, and often unnoticed until the outcome speaks for itself. That's the kind of power that doesn't need an audience. They understand that real influence doesn't come from talking about what you'll do, it comes from quietly doing it. While others are busy trying to be recognized, the Sigma INFJ focuses on progress. They don't need validation to confirm their direction. They work in silence because silence keeps distractions away and results in focus. People often underestimate them because they don't advertise their moves. They don't make big announcements or talk about plans. They just execute. And by the time anyone realizes what they were doing, it's already finished. That's what gives them an advantage. No one can interfere with what they don't see coming. Their silence isn't about secrecy, it's about control. When fewer people know your process, fewer opinions can distort it. The INFJ has learned that energy wasted on explaining yourself could be used to create something meaningful. So they keep their circle small and their actions private. But what makes their silence powerful is the impact it leaves, even after they're gone. From a room, a project, or a relationship, their presence lingers. People remember their influence, their insight, and the calm authority they carried. They don't leave noise behind, they leave direction. Their impact is built on meaning, not attention. They measure success not by recognition, but by alignment, by knowing they stayed true to their principles even when no one noticed. That's why their influence often grows over time. The effect of what they do continues long after the conversation ends. Sigma INFJs don't chase legacy, yet they build one effortlessly. They lead without asking for followers, they teach without needing credit, and they inspire without even trying. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's precision. And that's why, even when they move quietly, their presence is impossible to forget. The Sigma INFJ doesn't chase power, but somehow they always end up holding it. Not because they're loud or demanding, but because they understand what most people ignore. Power begins with self-awareness. Every rule they live by comes from experience, observation, and restraint. They don't try to control others, they master themselves. They move quietly, protect their peace, and choose their actions carefully. Their presence brings both comfort and intimidation because they operate differently. While others rely on influence and attention, the Sigma INFJ relies on understanding, patience, and emotional control. That's what gives them their strength. Their rules aren't meant to dominate, they're meant to maintain balance. They don't need recognition to validate their worth, and they don't react to noise that doesn't deserve attention. They've learned that silence, discipline, and observation create more impact than words ever could. People often mistake their calmness for detachment, but it's the opposite. They care deeply, just not recklessly. They've reached a level where emotional control replaces chaos, peace replaces validation, and action replaces talk. That's the real definition of power. So when you meet a Sigma INFJ, remember, you'll never fully understand what drives them, and that's exactly how they like it. Their influence isn't loud, but it's lasting. Their silence doesn't mean absence, it means mastery. If this video spoke to you, subscribe to Brainy 1, like this video, and comment "Power in Silence." Because the Sigma INFJ doesn't need to announce their strength. They live it quietly, consistently, and with absolute purpose.